Children's questions. Maybe? Okay. Here's the questions. Whether it catches up to me or not. You've got them on those sheets if you got one of those. So I'm going to tell a story, and I'm going to do this really, really soon. I'm going to tell a story from a Shakespeare play. Now, I asked my grandkids if they understood who Shakespeare was, and they said, yeah. So, old playwright. I want you to tell me which play the story comes from. I gave you some possibilities there. Is it Romeo and Juliet, The Tempest, or Hamlet? That's all you got to do. Just remember which play it is that I told the story from. And it'll be really quick. Next one, how many people did Jesus feed according to the story that I tell? That'll be a little later. And then the last question is, when does God make everything beautiful? Got that? Ready? Some of you are going, yeah, we're ready. So, what was the first question? There's a hint. In 1610, 1611, Shakespeare wrote The Tempest. And the story basically tells a tale of a group of people who are traveling from Africa, where they've just attended a wedding, and they are going back to Europe. And so they are traveling by boat, and a tempest, a storm, comes up, and it wrecks the boat. So we've got, the first basic act, the first little bit is kind of this story of this storm. The rest of the play takes place on an island where they are now stranded, and what they are supposed to do while they are stranded on this island. And as Act 2 opens, some of the major characters that you need to know are Prospero, the rightful Duke of Milan, Antonio, who happens to be Prospero's brother, Alonso, the king of Naples, Alonso's son, whose name is Ferdinand, and Alonso's brother, whose name is Sebastian. They're all stuck, along with some other people, on this island, and they're starting to talk with each other. And they've got one guy who's really happy and cheerful, and everything's going to come out fine. And then you got a couple guys, basically on Antonio and Sebastian, who are, going. They're a little bit less cheerful. They start making fun of the cheerful people. So at one point in Act 2, Scene 1, at one point, everybody falls asleep except for Antonio and Sebastian. And so we start having an interesting conversation between Antonio and Sebastian, and Antonio basically confesses that he at least thinks that he's killed his brother Prospero. It's not true, but you don't find that out till much later in the play. So Antonio thinks he has killed Prospero, which means that he is now the Duke of Milan in the stead of his brother. And so he's having this conversation now as he's the new Duke. And he's talking with Sebastian, and he starts to tell Sebastian about what's going on. And he tells Sebastian that, Ferdinand, Alonso's son, is lost at sea. They think he's dead. Also, spoiler, he's not, but you don't find that out till later. And for Antonio tells Sebastian that, it wouldn't take much. Alonso, the king of Naples, is just asleep just over there, and it wouldn't take much if they kind of killed the king of Naples. His son Ferdinand is lost. His daughter just got married in Africa. She's not coming back. So if they killed Alonso, the king of Naples, then Sebastian would be the king of Naples, and he could take the throne. And so they're having this conversation, and they come up with this, Antonio comes up with this line. It says this: We all were sea swallowed. They were all in a storm on the boat. Though some cast again, and by that destiny to perform an act, whereof what's past is prologue. What to come in yours and my discharge. Basically, Antonio's trying to tell Sebastian, look at everything that's happened up until now, everything that's back there has set us up for this moment. This moment where you and I are on this island with the king. And if we take out our swords and kill Alonso, then you will be king. And this is now in our hands. We get to decide this. What do you want to do? He's basically saying, I killed my brother so I could take his position. Now you can kill your brother and take his position if you'll grab a sword. Not surprisingly, the two of them grab a sword and start to make their way towards the sleeping people that are over there when the king of Naples wakes up. And he looks at these two guys with swords in their hands and he goes, "What are you doing?" And quick thinking, Antonio says, we thought we heard lions, so we were coming to protect you. Not really what was going on, but, But it has been the argument really for a long time about whether or not what is past determines what happens now. And there has been a lot of argument in a lot of different areas of life about whether or not we have the ability to choose, which I believe we do, or whether our circumstances cause us to do whatever it is that we are going to do. I vote for choice, but some people don't. Some people say, no, you were pre-programmed. Your life circumstances have caused you to be like this. There's nothing you can do to fight against it. And we keep that battle going on in our minds, in our souls, as we go through life. Do I have to? Did Sebastian have to try to kill Alonso? Or could he have been a good subject of his brother and just been part of that and been proud to be the brother of the king? It's an interesting question. And often I think we get in trouble when we think that we don't have choices. We've been talking a little bit about Habakkuk and silence. What happens when God is silent. And we are going to look at Habakkuk 3 this morning. So it'll be up on the screen. Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Just pause here. Past. I've heard of what you've done. I'm in awe of the stories I've heard. But all of that is past. It is setting up this moment. Repeat them in our day. In our time, make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. God came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran, Saleh. If you're trying to keep your blanks, it's basically a prayer. But it's probably not a prayer like we would recognize. I don't know whether you've ever done those acrostic prayer things. So, for instance, Acts, right? It's how to pray. So it starts with adoration, God, we love you. Then there is confession, I haven't been quite what I should have been. Then there's thanksgiving, I'm thankful for you. And then finally, supplication, please give me a Maserati, right? That's the way you're supposed to pray. You have this pattern. There's another one that just says pray. And it starts off with praise, God, we love you. And then there's repent, again, confession. I'm not quite what I should be. And then there's ask, the Maserati bit. And then yield. God, I yield my life to you. It's a model, but the model doesn't seem to be present in Habakkuk. He doesn't seem to know about this stuff. Because basically he says, oh God, I've heard about what you've done. I'm in awe of the stories that you've told me. But what have you done for me lately? I'm not seeing it, God. I want it now. I want to see what the stories of the past told. I want to see that now in my day. I'm not seeing it. What's going on, God? Are the stories true? Or not? And if they're true, then why are you not acting the way you did back then now? That's basically what he's saying. And then he comes up with this thing which we normally would skip over because we don't understand it. God came from Timon, the Holy One from Mount Paran, Saleh. And actually, if I'm being honest with you, that Saleh is not there. Okay? The modern translations of the Bible have taken that and placed it either in the footnotes or in the margins. It's no longer in the text because we don't understand it, so why put it there? And except that I think that it's important. So that's why I decided to put it back and put it in there. So what we don't understand. First, let's start with Saleh. What is it? We don't know. But from context, and we find it throughout a lot of the Psalms and a lot of the prayers in the Bible, it looks like it is simply a pause. It means stop here. Here's a prayer. And when you get to this point, stop. Pause. Be quiet. Shut up. Listen. The reality is that we live in really, really busy times. And often in our devotions and in our prayer lives, we're racing. We're trying to get through it as fast as we can so that we can get on to whatever's next. And Habakkuk here, and like I said, in a lot of the Psalms, there is this Saleh, this pause that says, just stop and listen. God is silent. Have you ever thought that maybe God is silent because you're not listening? Because you're too busy doing other things, that you can't hear that still, quiet voice that God's trying to speak to you? So as you pray, as you think about these things, that God is from Teman and from Mount Paran, just pause, stop, think about that for a moment. Let God speak back to you. What are you trying to tell us? God, speak to us as we pause, as we let silence. We really don't like silence. We don't like to be in quiet places. We try to design this service even so there's very little silence. And if there's too much silence, I know that my daughter will edit it out later to make it so there's less. But sometimes we need the silence, the pause. God, what are you trying to tell me? I want to hear your voice. So let me shut up. And we miss it. We think God is silent when he's not. He's been there talking. It's just we've never gotten quiet enough to hear it. Sometimes we just need to stop and be silent. The next thing we don't understand is this whole God came from Teman. What does that mean? That God came from Teman. And for me, I can get riled up about this verse. It goes along with my rant about the King James Version of John 3:16, which some of you have heard me rant about. And you're going, how do you rant about John 3:16? Well, think about it. Here. For God so loved the world, this King James Version, that he gave his only begotten Son. What does begotten mean? Came from somewhere. Created. It's a form of a word that we see in genealogies, like the one in Matthew. Abraham begat Isaac, or Isaac was begotten of Abraham. And Isaac begat Jacob, or Jacob was begotten of Isaac. And Jacob begat Judas and his brothers, or maybe we could say that Judas and his brothers were begotten of Jacob. There is a beginning point for them. So when we go back to this John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, this is where my rant starts. There was never a time when Jesus wasn't. He was not begotten. He was with Jesus. He was with God in the beginning. The world was created through him. We know that from John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was there from the very beginning. And he will be there at the very end. He's not begotten. And when we say that he was from Teman, we have the same idea that God, the Father, came from somewhere. And not only did he come from somewhere, see, this is where my rant comes in. You're starting to get a sense for it. Not only did he begin somewhere, but there was a time when he wasn't. Well, we know that's not true. So how can you say that God came from Teman? And again, we say it because we don't understand what Habakkuk is trying to tell us. And to understand, we have to go back and look at another passage which says, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Because Edom took revenge on Judah and became very guilty by doing so, therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will stretch out my hand against Edom and kill both man and beast. I will lay it to waste, and from Teman to Dedan, and they will fall by the sword. So here we have this idea. Now we know that Teman has something to do with Edom. And Edom was an enemy of Israel. And God did not prophesy great things for Edom. So how can we say that God is from Teman? What's this trying to tell us? And here's the answer to it. If you read the story of Job, you'll remember that Job had 3 friends who came to give him wisdom. The first one was named Eliphaz, and guess what? Eliphaz was from Teman. As a result of Eliphaz being come from Teman, Teman became the idea or the epitome of the source of wisdom. So when Habakkuk says that God comes from Teman, he's not really being literal here. He's saying that God is from wisdom. You think that Teman is a place of wise men? Well, God is so much more. God is so much more than any of the wise men of Teman. He is the source of wisdom. He is the one that we get wisdom from. And the wisdom of Teman wasn't all that great. And then he says this, God came from Teman, the Holy One, from Mount Paran. And again, we've got this problem. Well, what's Mount Paran got to do with this? What is Mount Paran? Is it another name for Teman? And the answer is no, it isn't. It's nowhere near Teman. But Mount Paran has got another origin story, and it's found here in Deuteronomy. The Lord came from Sinai and dawned over them from Seir and shone forth from Mount Paran. As far as we can tell, Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb, and Mount Paran are all names for the same place. So what we have is God comes from this place called Teman, which is wisdom, but not only that, he comes from Mount Paran or Mount Sinai, where Moses got the Ten Commandments and the law, and where God was proved to be holy. So what we're being told here is that God comes from wisdom and holiness. We know of your deeds, God. We know what you did, but more importantly, we know who you are. You are the God of wisdom and holiness. And the question that we need to wrestle with is, can we trust your wisdom and your holiness? And that's where our choice comes in. This is where we find ourselves a lot. We're going through some tough times. Admittedly, my family right now is going through some tough times. And the question that we find that we're asking is, God, can we trust in your wisdom? And can we trust in your holiness? God, you seem silent. But I know that you are wise. I know that you are holy. And because you are wise and you are holy, we place our trust in you. Where else could we place it? We'll continue in Habakkuk 3 with this prayer. His glory covered the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. His splendor was like the sunrise. Rays flashed from his hand where his power was hidden. Plague went before him. Pestilence followed his steps. He shook and shook the earth. He looked and made the nations tremble. The ancient mountains crumbled. The age-old hills collapsed. He marches on forever. I saw the tents of Cushan in distress, the dwellings of Midian in anguish. Were you angry with the rivers, Lord? Was your wrath against the streams? Did you rage against the sea when you rode your horses and your chariots to victory? You uncovered your bow and you called for many arrows. Soleil. Pause. You split the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and wreathed. Torrents of water swept by. The deep roared and lifted its waves on high. The sun and moon stood still in the heavens. At the glint of your flying arrows, at the lightning of your flashing spear, in wrath you strode through the earth, and in anger you threshed the nations. You came out to deliver your people, to save your anointed one. You crushed the leader of the land and of land of wickedness. You stripped him from head to foot. Soleil. With his own spear you pierced his head. When his warriors stormed out to scatter us, gloating as though about to devour the wretched who were in hiding, you trampled the sea with your horses, churning the great waters. That next blank is just a Google review. I'm old. You probably know that. I got married 42 years. She's not sure about that. 42 years and a couple months ago, which is a long time ago. Nelda and I got married in Victoria. We were living in Alberta. That's where I was from, and she was working here in a nursing home. I was going to school. And we made our way out in August to Victoria, where her parents lived, to get married. Now, you have to understand, 1981 is a long time ago. And a lot of the things that we have now, we didn't have back then. And so we were looking, we were poor students. And so our honeymoon was basically going to be the drive back from Victoria to Calgary, where I was heading back to the University of Calgary in the fall. I know, it sounds really romantic. So we were looking for a place on Vancouver Island where we could spend a couple of days before we started the trip back, basically. And we had a book. I know, it's a thing with paper in it. And you open it up and you flip through the pages. And this book had hotels in it. And it gave a little description of the hotel and what it was like and, how much and all the rest of those things. And we had this book, and we're flipping through this book, and we find this phenomenal motel. There wasn't a whole lot of rooms, but that was okay. We weren't looking for a lot. And we just needed one. And so we thought, well, this one looks good. It's in our price range. It's right on the ocean. This is going to be phenomenal. Like this is where we're going to spend a couple days after we get married. We'll spend it in this motel. And so we booked it, which we did by telephone back then. And so in August we got our stuff together, and we made the journey out to Victoria. And just because we wanted to see where we were going to be spending a couple nights after we got married, we thought we'd drive by this wonderful place that we would be staying in. And we drove by and looked at it, and it was a dump. And that was probably being gracious. This place was horrible. It was absolutely, it was unreal. It was bad. And we're going, we're going to spend 2 days there? Like, really? This is where we're going to be? There was this great place just across the street from it. So we went into this place and asked if they had a vacancy for a couple nights. They were totally booked up. But we told them we're getting married, and they said, well, tell you what, give us your name, and if anybody cancels, we will phone you. It was only a few days before the wedding, so it probably wasn't going to happen. But we left our name anyways, and then lo and behold, about a day later, I got a phone call. Well, I didn't. My in-laws did. And they said, yes, we've had a booking open up, and we've got room for you. And so we said, yeah, we'll take it. We'll go there instead of this dump across the street. Now we would do that differently. We have a thing called the internet. And you'd probably go on the internet and look for some places. And then you've got this thing called a Google review. And so you get to see all the people who have stayed there and what they say about it. And if it's a dump, they usually tell you it's a dump. Don't do this. Don't go there. Right? By the way, there's Google reviews for everything, including this church. Did you know that? Have you left your Google review on that yet? There are a few of you actually have. I just took a quick look at it the other day just to make sure I knew what I was talking about. We have a 4.5 rating. Just so you know, out of 5 stars, we got a 4.5 rating. We've only got one negative review, and that was actually at the last party at the point. Someone didn't get school supplies, and they were really upset at us. So they gave us a 1-star review and told everybody not to come here. But other than that, they're pretty glowing reviews for this place. You can go check it out. But it's what we do, right? It's a Google review. We find out who does what. And when you're reading through Habakkuk, and it feels like this is a review of all the good things that God is. This is what God does. This is the Google review for God. It's 5 stars, and it's wonderful. And he's got this in the middle portion of his prayer. Now, understand, he's still not sure, but he's rehearsing what he knows from the past. And he understands that if the past has been like this, then it's probably going to be that the future will be like that too. If you find a place with a great Google review in the past, well, you have at least a chance of it being good in the future. If you find a place that's a dump in a Google review, then you probably don't have much of a chance that it's going to be a nice place to be. It's just the way it works. So Habakkuk in his prayer is giving us this wonderful Google review of who God is. And he's saying, God, I know this is you. I know this is what you wanted to do and what you have done. And you are from wisdom and you are from holiness, and so therefore maybe I can trust you that this is what it will be in the future. That maybe you've got your everything together. You're ready here to come and to lead us into a beautiful future. I'm not seeing it yet. But the Google review is good, so I am willing to trust and follow you there. I'm willing to go where you have led us. And we find ourselves there a lot, I think. I mean, like I said, Nelt and I are there right now. And we're saying, God, we know not just what you've done in history, but we know what you have done in our lives. We look back at even just our life together, and we can see you move. We can see what you have done in our midst. And we've got questions right now. We're not sure, but we know you come from wisdom. We know you come from holiness. We know that you're still on the throne. So maybe we can trust you with our future. The Google review is good, so we're willing to walk into the future with you. I've got one more verse that I want to read. I heard and my heart pounded. My lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept into my bones and my legs trembled. Yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. That next blank is just simply the silence ends. We don't know what happened. We don't know what God said. Maybe he didn't say anything. But the reaction that Habakkuk has in verse 16 is what happens when God steps up and says or does something in your life. I've been there a few times. I can remember driving in my car down number 2 highway. I was in a time of soleil. I had silence. I didn't put on my music. I didn't have a podcast going. It was just me and silence as I drove down the road. And I could feel God settle in the passenger side of the car and just speak to me. Telling me, you know what? Everything's okay. And your knees get weak and you kind of want to stay there forever. But you know, at some point, life will continue on. And you will go somewhere. Habakkuk had an experience of some sort where he just simply understood that what he needed to do was wait. That the past really was going to define the future as far as God was concerned. And if he would just wait in faith, everything would turn out. John tells the story of the feeding of the 5,000. And so he tells of this day when Jesus comes and he's teaching, and he feeds this group of 5,000 people on the hillside. And then at the end of this time, the people are so impressed that they got fed that they want to make Jesus king. And Jesus knows that's not where he's supposed to be going. So he disappears up a hillside. And they're looking for him, but they can't find him. And finally, they all decide that they'll start to head back to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. And then Jesus comes down off the mountain. The disciples have left. They're on their boat crossing the Sea of Galilee. A storm comes up. And then Jesus walks out on the sea and catches up with them, calms the storm, and brings his disciples home. And the next day, the 5,000 find out that Jesus is there, and they come out and they start to talk to him. They want to see more. And Jesus starts to talk to them. He says, "You're only wanting me is because I fed you yesterday. I fed 5,000 people yesterday, and that's the only reason why you're looking for me. You want to see more miracles. But I tell you, that's not where you should be. You shouldn't be trying to follow me because of the gifts that I give you with my hands. You should want me for something more substantial than that." And then he makes this strange statement. He says, "Unless you're willing to eat my flesh and drink my blood, you will have no part of me." And it sounds like our communion ritual, but it really isn't. He's telling these 5,000 people that they need to be committed to him. It was a political saying. If a politician was out there and they were, trying to get people behind them for whatever they were doing, they would use the phrase, "Eat my flesh and drink my blood." Be totally committed to the cause that I'm committed for. And people would rise up. In the census of Quirinius, not the one that we're told of in the Bible, but the one that happened when Jesus was about 10. The only reason why we know it happened is because a guy named Judas of Galilee rose up in opposition, and he would have used a phrase much like, "Eat my flesh and drink my blood. Come behind me, and we will rebel against Rome for doing this." And Judas of Galilee is thought to be the father of the Zealots, of which at least one disciple was a member. And so Jesus starts to say, listen, you need to eat my flesh and drink my blood. You need to be committed to my cause. If you are committed to my cause, then you are walking with me. But if you're just looking for more food, that's not going to get us anywhere. And as he speaks, John says the people started to leave him. They started to go away. They wanted the easy food, not the commitment. And John looks to his disciples, and he says this, "From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him." "You do not want to leave too, do you?" Jesus asked the 12. And Simon Peter answered him, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and to know that you are the Holy One of God. You are from Mount Paran." Where else could we go? We know that what you're saying is the truth. We need you, no matter how hard it is. We need you. I think Habakkuk was in exactly that spot. To whom shall we go? I have come to know that you are God. There is no one else. So I will wait. I don't see what's going to happen, God, but I trust that you are from wisdom and holiness, and I will wait. I am convinced of you. I know what you've done in the past, and I know I said I wanted you to do it in the future, but more than that, I am sure that you will. I just don't know the timing. It's an old chorus we used to sing. Just simply said this, in his time, he makes all things beautiful in his time. Lord, please show me every day as you're teaching me your way that you do just what you say in your time. It's not my time. I get that. It's God's time. God gets to decide when. My only decision is that I'm going to follow. That I'm going to be with him. In your time, you make all things beautiful in your time. Lord, my life to you I bring. May each song I have to sing be to you a lovely thing in your time. If you know the song, can we sing it together? In your time. In his time, in his time, he makes all things beautiful in his time. Lord, please show me every day as you're teaching me your way, that you do just what you say in your time. In your time. In your time. You make all things beautiful in your time. Lord, my life to you I bring. May each song I have to sing be to you a lovely thing in your time. Let's just sing it again. In his time, in his time, he makes all things beautiful in his time. Lord, please show me every day as you're teaching me your way, that you do just what you say in your time. In your time. In your time. You make all things beautiful in your time. Lord, my life to you I bring. May each song I have to sing be to you a lovely thing in your time. God, we have your stories. We know what you have done. We have know what you have done throughout the Bible and how you have moved. But even more importantly, God, you have moved within our lives. And sometimes we are quick to forget those times. And God, I thank you. I thank you that you are a God who cares for us, who moves in our midst. And sometimes we are guilty of not pausing to hear your voice. Sometimes we go deaf and don't hear you. But I know that even now you are speaking. And God, I have faith that what you have done in my life in the past will carry on into the future. That what you have done throughout history will continue into the future of our nations. And that you are from wisdom and holiness. And we can trust you. So take our lives, take our songs, and do with them what you will. May we be a voice for you. There is no one else to whom we can run. We have run to you, and we love you. And we are so thankful that you are still on the throne, even in the tough moments of life. And we pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. God of all creation, King of all the nations, universe declares his praise. Can you hear it rising over the horizon? Come and join redemption's song. God of all creation, King of all the nations, universe declares his praise. Can you hear it rising over the horizon? Come and join redemption's song. God of all creation, King of all the nations, universe declares his praise. Can you hear it rising over the horizon? Come and join redemption's song. It's you, God, it's you. We know it's you, God, it's you.